Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about two trait crosses. And so we're looking at how we inherit two different traits at the same time. So remember that during meiosis, each gamete, each sex cell receives one member of a homologous chromosome pair. So remember that also that a homologous pair consists of one chromosome from dad, one chromosome from mom. And so these chromosomes are going to separate independently from each other. So in one egg or one sperm, either the paternal homologue or the maternal homologue will be found. You will not have both. And then a gamete will receive one homologue of each homologous pair of chromosomes, and thus one allele for each gene. So let me just draw what that looks like. If this is and we're drawing already duplicated chromosomes. There's one. Oh, whoops. Sorry. There we go. There's one. And now I'm going to do the other one in red. Here's the other. These are already duplicated. So these are homologues here. These are homologues here. When meiosis occurs, let's just change this so that I have eggs. Okay, I'm going to put, here's one gamete. Here's another gamete. Another gamete, because typically you have 4 gametes in normal meiosis. So in any given gamete, you might have a big or a straight and a squiggly blue. You might have a straight or a squiggly. You might have squiggly straight or straight squiggly, like that. So you might get the blue, so say blue is dad, red is mom. You might get dad's straight chromosome and squiggly chromosome. You might get mom's straight chromosome or squiggly chromosome. You might get dad's straight and mom's squiggly, or you might get mom's straight and dad's squiggly. So those are all different types of gametes that can be produced during independent assortment period in meiosis, during metaphase 2. And so what does that look like? This is a prettier picture of what I just drew, but here you have the different chromosomes. This is prior to the S phase of interphase, where DNA replicates. You have 2 long and 2 short chromosomes. These are homologues. These are homologues. So these are homologues. These are homologues. They replicate, and then they can either line up like this or like this in meiosis 1 at the metaphyseal plate. So if they line up like this on this side, then you're going to get a big or a little red and a big blue together. And then on the other side, you'll get a little blue and a big red. If they line up over here, you get big red, big and little red together and big and little blue together. What that means is the end results will look differently. So over here, we get little red, big blue, or a little blue, big red. Over here, we get little red, big red, and little blue, big blue. So the results end up making the gametes have different sets of characteristics. So they each have one allele, and in this case, we're looking at 2 different types of alleles. We're looking at freckles and short fingers, but they could be, any type of alleles on those chromosomes. So with independent assortment, Mendel didn't know what meiosis was. He didn't have that knowledge. He did not know about genes on chromosomes. He didn't even know what DNA was at the time. So this is before we knew DNA. But he realized that when he did his different crosses, his results were attainable only if the sperm and the egg contain every possible combination of factors. And this gave rise to the law of independent assortment. So in this law, each pair of factors separates independently of all other factors. Independent, oh no, I'm sorry. There's the T, sorry. Of all other factors. And all possible combinations that is an N, that is an S, sorry, can occur. So let's look at a two-trait cross. A two-trait cross is also known as a dihybrid cross, and it actually will illustrate the law of independent assortment. So we're going to look at freckles and short fingers. So again, I'm going to write up here my toolbox. I'm going to change it to blue. I just kind of like blue better. Okay. Big F, freckles is dominant to no freckles. Little f, no freckles. And then we're going to use S, big S, for short fingers. And little s for long fingers. So there's our toolbox. So a person who is homozygous for freckles and short fingers would have a big F, and a big S. Remember, homozygous means they have two identical alleles. And a person who has no freckles and long fingers would then be little f, little s. So if we did a cross between these two, it would look like this. And the gametes for this individual, you have to have one of each type of gamete. So they'd have that big F with that big S, that big F with that big S. So you could say times 2. And they could have this big F with this big S, this big F, and this big S. So again, times 2 more, which means the only gamete they're going to produce is big F, big S. The only gamete in this group is going to be a little f, little s. So, according to the law of segregation, the gametes for big F, big S are going to be big F, big S. That's all they can produce. And the gametes for little s will be little f, little s. That's all they can produce. So if you only produce a big F, big S, and the other group only produces, I'll just put it over here, a little f, little s, the only offspring you can have then would be big F, little big S, ooh, hello, little s. That is always so weird to me, right? So this is the only type of offspring you can produce. And that is known as a dihybrid because it's two heterozygous traits. So in this individual would have freckles and short fingers because they have that dominant F and that dominant S. And so here's when you can see this. We have one parent that is big F, big S, and they have freckles and short fingers. They're homozygous dominant. The parent over here has little f, little f, little s, little s. They have no freckles and long fingers. All of the offspring, the only gametes you can produce are big F, big S, and little f, little s. All of the offspring are going to be heterozygous for each trait, so they are considered dihybrids. So if you have two dihybrids reproducing with one another, what would the possible gametes be? So now we have to look at the law of segregation, and the law of segregation that states that each gamete gets only one letter of each kind. The law of independent assortment states that all combinations are possible. So if I have, and I'm just going to put it right here, big F, big S, little s, I can get, and I'm just going to put a line under, I can get this big F, right, with this big S. I can get this big F with this little s. I can get this little f with this big S. And I can get, there we go, this little f with this little s. And that's where these gametes come in. Okay? And so we see that here. So this is what a Punnett square, a two-trait Punnett square looks like. This is a two-trait . So each of the parents has 4 possible gamete types. And so we have, that's so weird the way they did that. That's okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 gamete types. So in here we have every single possible outcome. And what they've done to make it easier for the phenotype, remember phenotype is physical characteristics . They have color-coded the boxes. So this tan is all the individuals that have freckles and short fingers. The light purple are all the individuals that have freckles and long fingers. The pink are all the individuals that have no freckles and short fingers. And then the green is individuals that have no freckles and long fingers. And we get this ratio of 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 with regards to the different characteristics. So you'll have 9 individuals that have both dominant characteristics in a dihybrid cross with completely dominant characteristics. You'll have 3 that have one of the dominant characteristics and one recessive. In this case, it's the freckles are dominant, but they have long fingers, which is recessive. You'll have 3 with the opposite dominant characteristics. So in this case, short fingers is the dominant characteristics, but they have no freckles. And then there's always 1 that will be completely recessive. So before, this is a longer video, but I do want to show you how I do this cross. So you saw that the Punnett square with 2 traits. Another way that we can do this is by taking each of the characteristics and using our own small Punnett. So let me do that. So we have big F, little f, big S, little s, times big F, little f, big S, little s. And then over here, I'm just going to put that same big F, little f, big S, little s, little s. So this one is freckles, no freckles. This is short fingers. And this is long fingers. Okay, so we have our little toolbox. So what I like to show is I take these characteristics and I separate them. So I'm going to use the big F, just the freckles over here, okay? So I do a small punnet. And I'm going to move his right here, big F, little f, and I'll move hers right here. I'm sorry. Oh, whoa. Okay, sorry. I did this off a little. Okay, there. Big F, little f, big F, little f. Okay, so now I'm just going to bring these across. You've done this, so you kind of have that idea of how this works. And then underneath, I'm going to say, okay, here I have 1, 2, 3 that are big F something, right? So I have 3/4 that have freckles. Okay, I have 1/4 that do not have freckles. Okay, and then I'm going to do the S's over here. So I'm going to take this, bring it over here. Big S, little s, big S right here, little s, big S, big S, big S, little s, big S, little s, little s, little s. Okay, so now I have 3 again that are big S something, right? And so that means there's 3/4 have short fingers. And I have 1 right there that is little s, so that's 1/4 that are long fingers. So 3/4 of my of the children will have freckles. 3/4 will have, or 1/4 will have no freckles. 3/4 will have short fingers. 1/4 will have long fingers, right? And so that's what you're seeing here. So this is the law of probability, just the probability law. The probability of having freckles is 3/4. The probability of having no freckles is 1/4. Probability of short fingers is 3/4. Probability of long fingers is 1/4. If we want to know the probability of having a child with freckles and short fingers, we have to use the product rule of probability. So in that case, or the product rule states that we have to multiply the probability of each characteristic together. So for freckles and short fingers, I have to multiply 3/4 times 3/4. And so to do that, you multiply the numerator, which is the 3, times the 3, and that gives me the 9. Then you multiply the denominator, which is the 4, times the 4, and that gives you the 16. So if I want to do freckles and short fingers, or I'm sorry, freckles and long fingers, I just did short fingers, then I'm going to do 3/4 that are freckles and 1/4 that have the long fingers. And so 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 4 is 16. And so we're going to get that same 9:3:3:1 ratio, which we see in dihybrid crosses if we are dealing with complete dominance. Okay. I will be stopping here. Hold on, let me make sure. Yep, I'm going to stop here. This has been a long video, and we'll get into 2 trait crosses and test crosses in our next video. Bye.